On that fateful night, the full moon hung in the sky like a pale beacon, casting its light upon the death road. A group of us, daring youths driven by the recklessness of youth, decided to challenge the legend that whispered through the corners of our small town. Guided by bravado and a dash of morbid curiosity, we embarked on an old car towards the death road. The atmosphere grew denser as we advanced into that ominous night. Nervous laughter echoed in the cabin, masking the anxiety that hung over us like a sinister fog. Suddenly the car began to behave strangely, as if the road itself were alive, reacting to our presence. Lights flickered, and the air became increasingly oppressive. A growing unease enveloped us, but youthful courage insisted on ignoring the signs of imminent danger. That's when we saw it. A ghostly figure emerged from the shadows, hovering on the death road like an apparition from the legend. The vanishing traveller, with empty eyes that seemed to pierce our souls, stood before us. A chill ran down my spine, and fear seized me like a cold shadow. Laughter ceased, replaced by a disturbing silence. We desperately tried to reverse, to escape the threatening presence materializing before our unbelieving eyes. However, the car seemed plunged into a shadowy dimension, a distorted reality where normal rules did not apply. The traveller approached slowly, his melancholic lament echoing in the night. A sense of despair infiltrated our hearts as the urban legend manifested before us. The vanishing traveller, shrouded in a dark aura, fixed his empty eyes on me. A wave of terror paralyzed me, and visions of occult rituals and shadowy presences flooded my mind. It was as if the legend intertwined with my own reality, challenging the boundary between the supernatural and the rational. In an act of desperation, I decided to confront the spectre haunting us. I stepped out of the car, feeling each step weigh like lead. The lament of the traveller intensified, reverberating in the darkness. As I faced the entity, I realized that my courage and purity were the key to breaking the curse. The climax of the night unfolded like a surreal nightmare. Shadows danced around me, testing my sanity. Each terrifying sight seemed like a portal to the unknown, a journey through fear and sacrifice. At the peak of the confrontation, I understood that my fate was intertwined with the legend we dared. In an act of sacrifice, I faced the vanishing traveller, accepting the terrifying visions as a price for the redemption of the silent abbey. By breaking the dark enchantment, the traveller disappeared, dissipating into the night. The car, now freed from the distorted dimension, allowed our escape. But the night left indelible marks on our minds. As we distanced ourselves from the death road, shadows persisted in our minds, and a sense of unease accompanied us. The urban legend, now intertwined with our own experiences, resonated like a dark echo. Each of us carried the weight of the unknown, an understanding that the death road had left a profound mark on our souls, and the mystery of the silent abbey would continue to haunt our lives forever. On that fateful night, the shadows of the past materialized around me, turning what should have been a routine experience into a plunge into the unknown. I was a curious young man, skeptical of supernatural stories that echoed through the city streets. I decided to explore an old, abandoned mansion, a stage for rumors and urban legends whispering about sinister events that occurred there decades ago. The night was cold, and my flashlight was the only ally in the darkness that enveloped the decrepit property. As I entered the dusty corridors, each floorboard creaking under my steps, a shiver ran down my spine that I couldn't ignore. Indistinct murmurs floated in the air, as if the walls had kept secrets for too long. Ignoring the inner voice that whispered to turn back, I continued my journey. A forgotten room at the end of the hallway seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Turning the rusty doorknob, I was greeted by a gust of cold air that cut through the atmosphere. The flashlight illuminated a dusty room, and my eyes focused on an old photograph above the worn-out fireplace. The image portrayed a smiling family, frozen in time, However, something in the eyes of the figures indicated a deep sadness, a grief that extended beyond the faded photograph. A chill ran down my spine as I realized that this family was the last to inhabit the mansion before a tragic event. As I explored the silent rooms, a soft murmur echoed through the hallway. "Why are you here?" The voice seemed to come from the shadows, without a defined form. An invisible presence enveloped me like a chilly mist. I tried to ignore it, attributing the sound to my restless imagination. Nevertheless, as I advanced, the atmosphere became denser. Shadows danced in the corners of the rooms, and the feeling of being watched became oppressive. The voice whispered memories of tragedies, narrating the events that led the family to ruin. In a moment of enlightenment, I realized I wasn't alone. Shadowy figures filled the rooms, trapped in an eternal lament. Each step echoed a past echo, and the traumatic memories of that family reverberated through the haunted corridors. Terrified, I sought the exit, but the shadows seemed to close in around me. The voice, now imbued with sadness and anger, whispered my name, as if the mansion demanded a witness for its eternal torment. As I reached the rusty gate, a last vision haunted my senses. The family from the photograph, faces contorted in pain, staring at me with empty eyes. What I witnessed that night was etched in my mind, an encounter with the past that transcended rational explanation. The horror of that abandoned mansion intertwined with my own existence, a chilling reminder that certain stories never completely fade away. In an isolated corner, where lush trees guarded ominous secrets, I heard of a small abandoned chapel that was the setting for a possession story, challenging the boundaries of the sacred and the profane. The chapel, now shrouded in cobwebs and forgotten by time, was known as the Chapel of Tortured Souls. In the 70s, disturbing reports emerged about a demonic possession that had afflicted a young woman named Laura. Her family, desperate in the face of inexplicable events plaguing the girl's life, sought the help of a courageous priest, Father Sebastian. I decided to enter that enigmatic place and explore the traces of the battle against supernatural forces that occurred there. Pushing the rusty door, the smell of mould and ancient sanctity invaded my senses. Candles burned decades ago marked the path of the last attempt to expel the evil that had seized Laura's soul. On the altar, an open Bible revealed passages about the confrontation between angels and demons. The atmosphere was steeped in a heavy silence, as if the walls still echoed the cries and prayers uttered during the exorcism. Exploring the dark corners of the chapel, I came across strange marks on the walls, as if shadowy tentacles had left invisible scars. In the shadows I could almost hear the whispers and moans that once disturbed the place. The journey led me to the small back room where the exorcism reached its climax. It is said that Father Sebastian faced unknown forces as Laura convulsed and uttered obscenities in a language not of this world. The walls seemed to pulsate with an energy that escaped human understanding. As I delved into the charged atmosphere, an indescribable presence seemed to whisper around me. Images of the spiritual battle echoed in my mind, and I found myself witnessing the struggle between light and darkness that took place there. Leaving the chapel brought momentary relief, but the marks of that exorcism persisted in my mind. The story of the Chapel of Tortured Souls echoed as a warning about the fragile threshold between the visible and the invisible, between the sacred and the profane. Upon leaving, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, beyond the marks on the walls and the burned-out candles, lingered in that abandoned place. A reminder of the battle between faith and darkness that challenged the limits of what we understand as real. In a metropolis enveloped in shadows where skyscrapers lost their tips in the night clouds, I heard whispers about the Scarlet Trail, a serial killer leaving a trail of macabre puzzles behind. The entire city shuddered with the spreading fear as the body count increased. I decided to dive into the investigation of these crimes, tracing the sinister journey of the Scarlet Trail. The first crime scene, A deserted street under a flickering neon light revealed a macabre theatre. Each victim was meticulously arranged, their bodies marked by precise cuts forming strange patterns. The police, perplexed by the complexity of the murders, felt powerless against the criminal genius who left clues accessible only to sharp minds. Encrypted letters, enigmatic messages. It was as if the killer challenged everyone to decipher their deadly games. On a night of incessant rain, I explored an old alley where one of the victims was found. Shadows danced around me as I tried to decipher the codes left behind. Suddenly, an elusive figure moved between the alleys, fading into the shadows before I could distinguish its features. Every clue led me to a new chapter of the Scarlet Trail. In an abandoned location, I discovered a room covered in photographs of the victims, forming a dark mosaic that seemed to narrate a gruesome story. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized that the killer not only took lives but immortalized them in a twisted ritual. The hunt for the Scarlet Trail became a dangerous dance between the predator and the investigator. In a gaze exchanged in dark alleys, I glimpsed for a moment the silhouette of the killer. The mask hiding their face revealed only cold eyes, exuding indescribable cruelty. As the seasons changed, the Scarlet Trail continued its dark crusade. Clues seemed to form a complex puzzle, an enigma that challenged the very essence of justice. At the height of the investigation, the city found itself at a crossroads of fear, where every shadow hid the imminent threat of the serial killer who continued their homicidal journey. In the end, the Scarlet Trail remained an elusive shadow, leaving the city in suspense, fearing the next time the night would be tinged red by the lethal touch of the unknown killer.